Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm Mini John Mekwa. We do just a bit of business before we head back to the Sunrise Daily studios. We start from the global space normally. And that's what we're doing today, beginning with crude oil futures that slid in early trade on Friday on the prospect of higher for longer interest rates in Asia and the United States, while falling U.S. oil inventories kept prices from moving lower. Taking a look at the number right there, you see a red, well, not so much, but it's still red anyway. So Brent dropped 0.3% to hit $85.60. WTI, $81.20 after it went down 0.4%. The factors driving this is Japan's core consumers prices. Last month, it went up 2.5% year on year, according to data that showed early today. You know, they're ahead of us. That's Asian, growing the previous months and keeping the country's central bank on track to raise interest rates higher in the coming months. For the United States, data released show that the number of Americans filing new claims for unemployment benefit fell in the week ended June 14. That's broader strength in the jobs market persisting. Still strong employment to raise that prospect that the U.S. Federal Reserve could leave rates higher for longer. You know, now we're reducing it to maybe twice this year, if at all. Then oil was also supported by government data that shows a drawdown in United States crude stockpiles by 2.5 million barrels in the week ending June the 14th to 457.1 million. This data is according to the Energy Information Administration. And then we come back home to Nigeria now, looking at the Naira close. Unfortunately, we're back in the red territory for the Naira. NAFEM yesterday, we saw a 0.16% drop in the Naira to close at 1,485 Naira 36 kobo, open at 1,483 Naira 2 kobo. And then for NAFEX, 1,483 Naira 91 kobo. After it opened at 1,482 Naira 2 kobo, it lost 0.13% at the close of trade. Well, we've been doing 1,004, 1,005 for more than, I think, 2 or 3 weeks now. So do we call that a stable place at this time? I guess perhaps that will help manufacturers, you know, to have more concrete plans looking at the rate of Naira. But one thing that it seems manufacturers cannot or have not been able to maximize is the opportunity that might be opening up as we see multinationals exiting the country. In the midst of this continuing exit of those multinationals, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani, says that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Talking about making lime into lemonade now for the economy, and the trend would lead to new entry of companies, either indigenous or foreign. Mr. Rouhani was on Business Morning yesterday.
I mean, let's face it, what is more important in economics is what the future holds rather than what the past has shown. So typically, what we are saying is that we are beginning to see some investors who have a higher risk appetite coming into Nigeria, while those who are skeptical or indifferent or have other options and now begin to review what they have to do next. Some are exiting, some are downgrading their presence, while some are actually coming in. Those that have tolerance and have the capacity to manage in difficult situations, what we call how to thrive in chaos, those ones are coming in. But after chaos and after difficulty comes light at the end of the tunnel. I think that cautiously we are optimistic that things are going to start improving slowly. And that's why I come up with the whole idea that the inflation numbers came out on Saturday and pointed to a particular type of picture. The picture is that the rate of increase in price levels has actually begun to slow down. And therefore we are projecting, tongue-in-cheek, that inflation begins to decline from the month of July.
And now let's see what's happening a bit from yesterday also with the Central Bank of Nigeria's recapitalization plan. Well, counting down 2 years, we do have the banks are already making moves, and we saw Fidelity Bank yesterday heading to the capital markets. The Fidelity Bank is the first to take this move, even though we've seen others share their plans and all of that. We saw Fidelity Bank PLC opening up the gateway for investors to key into the bank's big plans for the industry, and Fidelity team presented the facts behind the offer at the Nigerian Exchange Group premises in Lagos.
The D-Day is finally here for investors within and outside the country to have a chance to invest in Fidelity Bank. And it's a double offer by Fidelity Bank PLC with 29.6 billion rights issue and 97.5 billion naira public offer.
Executive Officer, Dr. NECA.
The NGX acknowledges a bold step Fidelity Bank PLC is taking and assures the exchange is ready for the undertaking.
We're really delighted that Fidelity has chosen to use this platform to communicate its financial performance, operational development, and strategic plans to undertake a capital raise.
Fidelity Bank PLC is the first to hit the market for a capital raise under the Central Bank of Nigeria recapitalization exercise.
Given that Fidelity Bank has already started the process of raising capital, additional capital, ahead of central bank's directive, requiring the banks to raise minimum capital base of 200 billion for national banks and 500 billion for banks with international operation like ours.
Mr. Stanley Amuche, Executive Director at Fidelity Bank PLC, presents a summary of the facts behind the combined offers, showcasing the bank's compliance to environmental, social and governance issues.
Our share structure is well diversified. You won't have any single individual name that has up to 5%. That's the diversity we have in our share ownership. On the corporate structure, we are here, Fidelity in Nigeria. We have one subsidiary today in UK, that's Fidbank UK, which we own 100%. Geographical location, of course, in Nigeria, we have 251 locations here, and then a subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiary in the United Kingdom.
Checking out the bank's scorecard in the last 4 years, starting from the 2020 full-year performance, gross earnings have risen 169% as at full year 2023 at 556 billion naira. Growth is also seen in profit before tax and net loans and others.
Now what we have on offer now is 13.2 billion ordinary shares. 10 billion is for the public offer at 9 naira 75 kobo, and 3.2 billion ordinary shares is for the rights issue at 9 naira 25 kobo.
Fidelity Bank PLC, the first to tap the market for capital raise, and investors are already showing strong demand for Fidelity Bank shares with expectations high.
Welcome back. Now let's drill down on that, opportunities that may be available to mostly domestic investors as multinationals exit the country. And we're going to have that conversation with the Director General of Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, Dr. Adewale Smart Oyenride, joins us from our Abuja studio. Dr. Oyenride, you've been busy these days. I see you're preparing for your summit and all of that, but thank you so much for making time to speak with us this morning.
Thank you for having us. Good morning, viewers.
Great. So I know that obviously it's heartbreaking and it's sad and scary. We see companies closing, steel company, makers, consumer goods, industrial goods, just sending shocks down the spine of Nigerians. But I mean, the other way to look at it is that this may be an opportunity for domestic investors, manufacturers to fill up this space. What do you see from this perspective?
Well, as many have said, and we align absolutely with that perspective, that Nigeria is a land of opportunities. If you take a cursory look at the global community, many countries don't have the kind of potential we have, the kind of resources that God has endowed us with, both from the context of natural resources and the context of human resources. We are greatly endowed, and there's really no reason, as many have said, why we are where we are currently. So for those that are living, there are reasons why they are living, and for those that are coming, those that have seen the opportunities, there's also a reason why they are coming. Our hope, our earnest hope is that the reasons why many are leaving, that the government and stakeholders, we all collectively do the needful so that we address those issues, so that those that are coming newly, they will not face the same challenges that those are living that they are currently facing. So we need to stop the RIGMA rule. It is better when you have new investors coming in, building on the current investors, both local investors and foreign investors. It is easier, it is better when you have them coming in and you are not in this RIGMA rule of substitution. Some are leaving and some are coming, some are leaving and some are coming, which causes a lot of distortion, even in the context of employment and job creation. So for us, it's neither here nor there. We just hope that we address those issues quickly and we address them fundamentally.
And what approach would you suggest, or do you see the government or even the private sector, as you have said, it's a joint collaboration and we need everybody's hands on deck. Do you see the intention or intentional steps being taken to do this needful that you talked about?
Now, government have its rule, as its definitive rule. The private sector, we have our rule. The average Nigerians, they have their rules. Other stakeholders, civil societies, everybody have their salient rules. And the expectation is that we'll find at a point, we'll have our objectives and interests, even labor, our objective and interest at a point, we coalesce into a focused direction where the whole conversation will be about national development. The whole conversation is about economic growth. The whole conversation will be about enhancing our capacity to generate this prosperity that this country has the potential to generate. So we have our role, and government have a bigger role in the context of creating that environment and also building consensus. I think that's part of the things that have been missing. Building massive consensus around the reforms that are ongoing, around the programs of government, and around the intention of government. Once we get everybody behind government, it becomes easier for government reforms, government programs to yield desired objectives.
Yeah, and yesterday we did see that you met to say that these are some of the issues you want to talk about at your summit, which I believe is next week. But one would say, haven't we done enough talking? We've been talking even before the reforms came, and the reforms have come. Economists and private sector and analysts have been talking of what should have been done perhaps before the reforms and even now to quell some of the harsh realities. So what's going to be different this time around?
Now, and thank you for coming to the summit. We have been talking really, as you said. Advocacy has been going on at different levels. But the reform gives not only the private sector, or the summit, gives not only the private sector, but also the government, gives it the massive opportunity, especially at this critical time, the massive opportunity to engage the community of employers in a 2-day event where policy options, policy conversations can actually be held, where policy recommendations can actually be made. And the summit, in its 3 years existence, we had the first one 2 years ago, and the team was enrolling the private sector as engine of national development, with consequential positive effects. Last year we had on trade and promoting trade and non-oil exports. And the outcome of the summit last year was part of the policy recommendations that we were able to make to the new administration when they came in. So for us, the summit has gone beyond a talk shop. It's a policy program, a policy event like no other, organized by employers to build consensus not only between the employers and also give government the opportunity to engage and engage constructively. It is one thing for you to engage those whose interests are beyond national development. For the employers, our sole interest, our major interest is how do we develop this economy and allowing the private sector to fulfill its potential, the big potential that we have to chart a positive trajectory for this economy. That is the conversation that we're going to have at the summit. And as I said, the summit has gone beyond a talk shop. It's quite a fundamental conversation that every important person, economically important person, every individual that has a stake in this economy, that they should participate in.
Yeah, but I mean, after the tour, because I mean, at the summit, you're still going to, what's the plan? You should have government personnel there, obviously, but are you putting on a communique? Are you following up? You know, things to really make it concrete.
Now, this is the plan for us, and this we did in the first edition, we did in the second edition. The summit will run from Tuesday 25th to 26th, and the theme is economic renaissance. And you agree with me, there's nothing we need as dire as economic renaissance in this country now. And the idea is, how do we harness government reforms? The reform has affected all of us differently. How do we harness government reforms with private sector agility? Can the reform work without the cooperation of the private sector? We don't think so. So how do we harness private sector agility to make the reforms, to make them work? And for each of the sessions that we're going to have, and as we did in the second edition, is to come up with definitive communique, an action plan that will share with relevant agencies of government. We'll be discussing issues about fiscal and monetary policy. We'll be discussing issues about regulatory issues. We'll be discussing issues about legislating for businesses to thrive. We'll be discussing issues about skills. So all these conversation, for us, we come up with communique and distill it down to relevant agencies, ministry, and government to also guide their action. We're not interrogating what we are doing, but for us, it's more of coming up with policy options that we believe strongly, if implemented, can hasten the growth and development of this economy, and also hasten the achievement of the 7-point agenda of this administration. So it's not a talk shop. Definitive action plan will come out of this summit that we believe strongly, as it has done in time past, to aid the growth and rapid development of this nation.
Meanwhile, Mr. Oyerinde, do you think that perhaps it's okay to just watch things as they continue? Yesterday or 2 days ago, we had a steelmaker in Ogun State, RT. They've also announced they'll be leaving. A little bit told me PEP is also leaving. You know, so is it safe? Is there nothing that should be done or could be done, perhaps to stop or reduce the exit? Is it all right? Perhaps it's just creating space for domestic players to come on board?
Well, there's quite a lot to be done. And as I mentioned earlier, government have to take the lead. On our part, and at the Global Forum, we are members of Business Africa, a community of business owners and employers in the whole of Africa. We are members of Federation of West African Employers, also the Committee of Employers and Investors in West Africa. And at the global level, we are also members of the International Labour Organization, where employers gather and where we have deep conversation about investment, about financing, about growth generally. So for us, we play our part in convincing investors, in convincing the global community that Nigeria is a fertile ground to invest. Now, for government have to play a major role also. We want to commend the work of PEBEC, what PEBEC is doing to promote ease of doing business in this country. But every agency, and this is very important, every agency, every ministry, all departments of government, both at the federal and the subnationals, they must all work in harmony so that we reduce the contradictions that we find in this economy. And those are key issues. One agency of government or the federal government cannot be promoting job creation, and another agency of government is also creating bottlenecks for job creation. You cannot say one agency of government is promoting ease of doing business, and some other agencies of government or level of government, they're also creating bottlenecks for ease of doing business. Everybody must work in harmony so that we are not communicating different messages to the international community. The international community, they are listening, they are watching, and they are receptive to coming. But those issues, those big and salient issues about the regulatory environment, about the tax environment, even about security, we need to deal with them because those are fundamental issues. Not to mention the issue of the justice system. Look, if your justice system, your legal system is not strong enough, and it doesn't give an investor the guarantee that when there are issues, the legislative system will deal with the issues and deal with it without partiality, then it becomes difficult for them to come. Those are issues that we think government can handle and handle quickly, and they are not rocket science, basically.
All right, Mr. Oyemide, thank you so much for those suggestions. Obviously, we have to keep talking. We cannot give up on our country. We cannot give up. We have to do the little we can. Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Adewale Smart Oyemide, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
So that's it. More companies keep leaving the country. Is it good? The pharmaceuticals, I mean, we're all paying for that because maintaining your health this time around, among other things, is really expensive. Let's hope that something urgently and intentionally will be done, maybe to stop others from leaving. Some of the suggestions by Mr. Oyemide. Now let's head to the market and find out. Yesterday, the federal government did disclose that the bond auction for June will be out. This is an opportunity to invest in the federal government for a 5-year security for the federal government for the month of June, that is. For the 5-year auction bond at 150 billion, this is the rate that it's going for: 19.30, 7-year, 18.5, 9-year, 19.89. Now that's the federal government plan to raise 450 billion naira through the June 2024 bond. We know they did say they're going to the Euro bond, that's outside the country, but that's the details of that, I guess they are not ready for that yet. This is domestic and gives Nigerians the opportunity to tap into. It was supposed to start last week on Monday, June 17th, but obviously the holidays and all of that moved to 24th. June the 24th, that it aims to raise significant funds to support government fiscal policy and infrastructural projects. So it's an opportunity, just like you have an opportunity with Fidelity, also with the reports we brought to you earlier. So you have both the private sector and then the public sector, whichever you want. Another news coming from the market yesterday is about businessman Mr. Femi Otedola. He increased his stake in FBN Holdings yesterday. That's it. Mr. Femi Otedola increased his stake in FBN Holdings. And we saw FBN Holdings really surge yesterday, by the close of trade. But this news wasn't out by then yet. It was later. So obviously, this is what happened. We saw FBN Holding was the highest when it came to volume of sales yesterday. So this is the man that led that sales yesterday. So now he's holding, he purchased 546.67 units of shares worth 12.01 billion naira yesterday. I know there's that contention, is he the major holder? So we'll let them tell us. We don't want to get into all of that. Before now, we had 7.01% stake in the bank. That's FBN Holding behind Obaltodekos Barbican Capital Limited, which holds 8.67. That was before this. So we'll let them do the math and then they'll tell us who's the major shareholder now with FBN Holding. So now let's look at the details of the market close yesterday. The market was almost unchanged. That's the NGX at the close of trade yesterday. Gained just 1 billion naira and very slight movement right there. This will not be for yesterday. So 99,842.95, that was the close yesterday. And then equities cap added 1 billion naira at 56.479 billion naira. Activity was mostly red. And then the banking sector, as you would suggest or guess, after that move by Mr. Otedola, we saw banking was up 0.72% at the close of trade. FBN Holding was the highest when it came to volume of sale. Of Fidelity, which also was in the market yesterday, they had, because the day before they had done about 1 billion when it came to volume of trade. So profit taking was so rapt yesterday, they lost about, I think, about 4% at the close of trade. But I know they're coming back with the offer that's now open. Industrial goods was positive, insurance positive, and oil and gas has gone back to being on change. Top trades, obviously, for FBN holding 871.08 million. Fidelity followed, but that was profit taken. And then Transcore, those were the major one. Now, for the unlisted market, the NESD yesterday was negative 1.28%. Activity chart was all green. Hope we have the right one. Yes, we do. 1.28 at 1,533.7 and market cap 2.102. Activity chart was all green yesterday. Volume was really high, more than 300% increase in the volume of trade at the unlisted market. And I do believe that we would see a lot of activities in the fixed income. Anita there to be here during Business Incorporated at 1 p.m. to give us details of that, especially with this calendar, the June bond calendar out now. People get busy, investors are going to get busy, and then we'll find out what's going to happen. So I'll see you at 1 p.m. with Anita Ede to do the markets and do a lot of rounds. We have 55 minutes, it's more time then. But for now, let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.